Our first speaker is David Carter. David is Executive Director of Innovation Factory. David himself has been an innovator. He has worked in the IT industry, has been involved in taking a startup to market, raising over $20 million in venture capital. And he now runs Innovation Factory in Hamilton, which is the regional innovation center with a mandate to be catalyst for innovation in this region. David, it's great to have you here, and he's going to be talking on fostering innovation and creating clusters.
Thank you, Dr. Mbark. Good morning. So I thought I was going to come up and talk about technology and be funny. Turns out we have a comedian here with us, so that's going to be difficult. And maybe I'd be really knowledgeable. Well, room full of scientists and robotic specialists, so maybe I won't be the most knowledgeable guy in the room. So I'll just try to get through my presentation in the next 25 minutes and have you not get up and leave. How's that for setting the bar? My name is David Carter, so I'm the Executive Director of the Innovation Factory. The Innovation Factory is a regional innovation center, so any entrepreneurs, whether they be in the robotics space, life science space, advanced manufacturing software, anybody that wants to start a company and innovate on something comes to our center. We're not for profit. We're mostly funded by government grants and companies, and we want to help you get to that sort of point of commercialization. So ideas are a dime a dozen. Executing on those ideas and turning them into companies, that's what's really hard, and that's what we try to make really easy. That's all right. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm DKR Carter. If you want to send me an email with any questions, I'm david.carter@innovationfactory.ca. If I go through my brief history of being an innovator, I worked at Microsoft in the 90s, and how many people remember the 90s? No, kidding, a young audience. At Microsoft in 1990, we really thought we were the Google at the time. We were the young, hip, cool kids, and we innovated a lot of things, and then time passed. I ended up quitting because it felt like we were the ones getting beaten by the Googles. We had become what we made fun of, which was the IBMs. So I actually went off and started a software company, and I started a software company based on something I'd spent a ton of money on at Microsoft, which was managing content. And I did that for 10 years, and even when I left, we were still calling it a startup because that's just really a mode you're in now. So I was a startup for really 12 years. And then when I finished that, now I run the Innovation Factory. So, you know, I like to draw on those experiences and sort of share that with you now in terms of what worked and what didn't. Whenever you do a presentation, they say, tell your audience what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? So don't just have this long, complicated speech. So if you need to be somewhere, I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you. There's power in creating these clusters, groups of people. There's tons of proof. I'll show you some proof. And what I want you to do is run out and form more clusters. Okay? So if you want the details, they're going to come. If you're busy and you need to go somewhere, totally understand that, but that's the surprise ending. I like to use nature as an example in terms of clusters being all around. So, you know, why would you cluster? Well, in the animal kingdom, if you were a big herd of elephants, you look pretty imposing, right? By hanging out in groups, you look like a pretty imposing force, and I'll parallel that with non-animal in a bit. Sometimes just being part of a larger group means you're not a target, right? What's the joke? If a bear's chasing you and your friend, you don't have to run fast, as fast as a bear, just faster than your friend. Well, in herd, you know, there's a safety in numbers in terms of if someone's going to target you, at least they've got a whole group of people to target, and there's some safety that goes along with that. There's strength, really, in forming these clusters, or in this case, a flock of geese, right? So they use the group to actually get further and be stronger, where they change the leaders and they move through you know, different patterns to get further. There's sort of competition that exists in these clusters, and you know, we talk a lot about cooperation and collaboration, but the reality is in a lot of those cases, you're kind of doing the stack ranking where you're looking around and going, maybe that person's a bit smarter in this area than me. I better up my game a little bit. Or I think I want to go toe-to-toe with this company and see if you know, the outcome is a win. And I remember one of the clusters I was most active with was when I was in the software space, was with my competition. We would get together probably twice a year, complain about the same things because we had that camaraderie, right? We had all the same issues and the same kind of client issues. And we'd talk about what was hard, and we'd sort of do a little self-assessment of each other, and then we'd go back and be competitors. But that makes you stronger. And of course, today is all about that, right? You're probably making friends amongst each other while you're holding some things pretty close to the vest and you don't want to share some of your secrets. You sound great when you're in a cluster, right? You have lots of, no, but you have lots of volume. And we learned this with social media. So you get somebody in social media that, that does a hashtag and it takes off and it sounds like millions of people with this common idea. And when you dissect it, it's actually, might only be dozens of people with the same idea. But as soon as you get a dozen people together making noise about the same thing, it resonates, right? It really has a strong voice. So by sort of, working with one voice, you're stronger, and certainly hunting when you're going after other markets, you're stronger. Clusters taste great, right? Good, the last group didn't laugh at that at all. So either you're really hungry and disappointed in breakfast, or you actually thought that was funny. I'll keep working on that. Maybe next time it'll be hilarious. At the end of the day, it's really about perception versus reality. When you hang around as a group, there's a lot more reality, right? There is all this competition, but the outsiders looking in at you see you as bigger. It really is a case of 1 + 1 = 3. And so the company I had before was really about social media metrics and measuring deep analysis of social media. So a typical client would be someone like Fox Broadcasting or Major League Baseball. And they really wanted to dissect who were the influencers, who were the people, the bloggers that would write about a team that seemed to have thousands and thousands of fans, when they maybe only had hundreds, but they had lots of, they were making lots of noise and they seemed bigger. And there's so many things out there now on the internet that have one perception, but when you scratch a little deeper, have this whole different reality. So it can definitely work in your favor if you go off and form these sort of clusters or groups. So why do I care about clusters? Well, if my job is at the Innovation Factory is to create economic success here in Hamilton, through innovation, I need groups that are strong to go off and create subgroups that are strong that we can build from that. And I'll give you a great example. There's a group in Hamilton called Software Hamilton. So anybody that's part of the software scene can go there at night, and they have once-a-month meetings, and we can watch a company do a demo. And that's great. You meet peers, you sharpen your skills and do all kinds of things. But then what happens is you realize, this is too broad. This isn't interesting to me. I'm a mobile software developer. This guy who's talking about enterprise software doesn't appeal to me. And what you do is you form these splinter groups, and you go and create a smaller group that seems kind of small at the time, but then that becomes attractive, and again, you grow that and grow that. And think about your own industry in terms of robotics. Robotics can be a whole bunch of things. It can be drones, it can be movement, it can be mechanical site or automated site. So just so many things that this can be. So you start the group, you build it, and then you splinter it off so you can specialize in different things. So one of the things you can do as part of your cluster is really get knowledge of what it is you're trying to fix. Because I see it all the time when we have entrepreneurs come into the Innovation Factory, and they have these great ideas, but they're fixing something that no one sees as a problem. They've just figured out some cool way to do something. Look, I've got a brand new chair, and it does this really cool thing. And you sort of look at them and go, well, who was asking for a new chair? Who was asking for a rebuild in that product? But because you're so close to the space, and because you've got some technology, you're just proud of it, and ta-da, here you go. So what happens is you working in isolation haven't seen what the real problem is. And so we have some brilliant people that are working on things that have zero economic viability whatsoever. No one's going to buy their product, and if we're lucky, we can get in front of them and say, stop now, stop working on that, and redirect that energy. If we're really lucky, we can get them into a group. We can say, well, here's someone that also wants to solve that problem or that industry, and they've done a bit more market research, or they've come at it from another angle. That group or that cluster is really what makes it strong. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to tell you what has been done. I can't tell you the number of people that come in with inventions for things that have already been invented. And I mean, I would embarrass some people if they were in this room, but they literally would come in and say, I've got this thing, and it is a small device you carry, and you can answer phones on it or attach the internet. And you're like, no, dude, it's called a cell phone, or that's a made-up example. But literally, with a little bit of market research, we can find out that problem has just been solved. So half the time, being involved in a group is not reinventing the wheel and solving real problems. And then the other best part about being part of these groups is you take advantage of strengths, right? Entrepreneurship is not a solo endeavor. And we have this problem all the time where we get a brilliant scientist or a brilliant engineer, someone that has fixed it. But entrepreneurship, solving that problem, is just this part of the journey. Figuring out how your problem is going to find the customer, or figure out how your solution is going to get manufactured or marketed. It is so hard, and without the right team or working in a cluster, it doesn't happen. And it seems like it does when when you go and look at the outside world and you look at things that seemed like overnight successes. Well, Facebook, right? Mark Zuckerberg just did this thing, and then all of a sudden 1 billion people were using it, and bada bing, bada boom, it went viral, no problem, right? It doesn't work that way. It never works that way, and it's only when we look at things retroactively that it feels like it worked that way. But we come across these people all the time who are in this early stage. In fact, in my company, we were bidding for some business at a college, years and years ago, and they said to us, no, we're going to work with this company, the Facebook, to do this. It was student profiles, and they were a nobody company at the time that were just slugging away at clients just like us. Sadly, they did a little bit better than our company did, but there's no such thing as a viral sensation that happens overnight. Generally, if you trace these things back, it took a long time to get there. So, you really need these teams of marketers, business people, inventors, all kinds of stuff. So why do we do it? We do it because, for the competition, the cooperation, it's stronger, it's easier, there's safety, there's all kinds of reasons to get together and form, whether that's a team, a group, a cluster, whatever it is we want to call it. The example I do like to give is Silicon Valley. So if you were a software company right now and you said, I need to start a company, you might say, I need to start that in Silicon Valley. Why would you be saying that? Well, you'd be saying that because things get noticed in the software space in Silicon Valley. There's lots of investors. By being in Silicon Valley, you might run into other people. One of the other reasons is you can fail in Silicon Valley, and that group is very accepting of that. That group says, oh, no, this is a whole neighborhood of software startups that have gone through all kinds of iterations. If you talk to any of these people, they've started companies you've never heard of. This is their 4th gig or 5th gig. This one is finally hitting the home run. So there's safety in Silicon Valley. There's support in Silicon Valley. There is a whole ecosystem that has been built there to support these things. Hamilton, you could say the same thing. If you went down Barton Street and you looked at all the companies that were in that area, you would say all of these companies were here to support steel. So we have first of all, port, and then we have some steel companies. Then we've got these support companies that support steel companies, and then we've got products that need steel companies. And so you build this whole ecosystem, and Silicon Valley did the same thing. We're lucky enough that Waterloo tried to mirror that 25 years ago. 25, Kevin, is that around there? Well, they said there's no reason why we can't be the same thing. So they started with the University of Waterloo offering, at the time, state-of-the-art computer science, and how they got those computer science people working in industry with their co-op program was very innovative. And if you look at that environment today, which in Hamilton we're really trying to recreate in a number of sectors, they've got a whole bunch of companies that will support you. They've got a university that will support you. They've got groups that are spin-offs from the university. One's called Velocity, which was really about taking the entrepreneurs specifically and pulling them out. And that's already spun off into the Velocity Garage, Velocity Science, Velocity Foundry. So all of these things just said, let's create a little gather. We'll be this, and then if that's successful, we'll spin off this, and if that's successful, we'll spin off this, and it grows and grows. Again, you don't build it for what you think it's going to be in 25 years. You build it for what you can accomplish now and what it might grow to. In Hamilton, so how many people here are from Hamilton? I know we've got a lot of out-of-towners. Good news. So we're trying to do some of those things in Hamilton. So my group, Innovation Factory, we're working with McMaster University and Mohawk College to create the Forge. So the Forge is our accelerator space. So if entrepreneurs, and specifically youth entrepreneurs, are looking for a place to incubate their business, they fill out an application, and if they're successful, then they end up on the 3rd floor above us. It's a pretty no-frills environment, because the benefit of the environment is you're working with people who could be your peers, they could be your competition, they could be future teammates in your group. So we've created a cluster of essentially entrepreneurs. Actually has been very successful. We've only had it going for about a year, but we see a couple of promising companies in that group of 15, so much so that we're actually looking for a space in downtown Hamilton to do the same thing. So we spun that off, right? We said, here's a group. It's kind of a lot of things, so it's entrepreneurs in robotics, it's entrepreneurs in advanced manufacturing and software and some social things. How do we now take a specific group and spin that off and create a cluster in downtown? So that cluster will really be around social and cultural innovations. So it's everything from restaurant apps to bike share and that kind of thing. So, you know, that's really how we iterate on these things. We're also doing the exact same thing with the life science sector. And this isn't all about startup. So in the case of the life sciences sector that we're working on, we're taking big institutions that are, you know, well, they're all here, but they're big, fat, slow institutions that don't necessarily make changes. Notice I looked over to the left when I said that. And we're saying there's a ton of value in working together. And of course you compete at different levels, right? Of course Mohawk is competing with McMaster for students. And of course Hamilton Health Science and St. Joseph's compete on different levels. But there's more ways that they can actually cooperate. And when we're trying to attract a world market to Hamilton, it's better for our cluster of life sciences, now called the Synapse Life Science Consortium, to point to, you know, heroes like Dr. Anvari who bring world attention to the stage. And while they're looking at us, here's the other things we have to offer. And even better, while we're meeting with each other, we find out about projects that are going on that maybe we could actually share in. And you know, I'll give you a quick anecdote. I was at Hamilton Health Science, and they were talking about post-operative care of cardiac patients. So, you know, nowadays you get your chest cracked open for surgery, and 2 days later you're home. You know, when 20 years ago you would be in the hospital for weeks. So we have to treat patients differently now when they're home. Well, what can we do differently? Well, we can give them mobile devices so we can know what's going on. They can have wearable computing so that we know, you know, how active they're being. There's all kinds of technology that can give them as good a level of care without keeping them in an environment that has other sick people with, you know, risk of infections and all kinds of things. But so we were sitting around the table talking about what options were there, and I was invited because, you know, I'm from the software industry, and we were just blue skying things. And I said, well, what about the folks at Mohawk? What do they say? And, you know, the person in this meeting said, oh, what does Mohawk have to offer? And I know there's connections between Mohawk and Hamilton Health Science. It's two big institutions. I know there's connections. There just didn't happen to be for this one individual. He's, you know, heads down in research for, you know, post-operative care. He did not know it existed. And I said, well, actually, Mohawk has this incredible e-health division that, you know, can give you advice on wearable computing and how do you put records into this whole electronic health system. You should really talk to these guys. So this wasn't even a case of saying, you know, hey world, notice Hamilton. This is a case of saying, hey, two giant institutions who are already partners and have probably, you know, done big partnership agreements together, just getting those actual people to know each other exists. And then once we had these people meet, it was magic, right? This one, you know, clinical person to see that someone knew all the technology side of things that scared the heck out of them. Just think of what, you know, you guys are all doing in terms of what you're inventing in terms of robotics. I guarantee what you think is really simple, there's someone in industry that's trying to solve a problem that thinks this is complete, you know, out of their realm rocket scientist, that they don't realize that someone's probably solved in a high school robotics competition. It's just all because of your context. So the more we get out and exploit that, you know, the better. And of course, the best thing is once we get all these companies working together, these big companies, then the little companies get that safety in the herd, right? So there's all kinds of smaller companies here in Hamilton that may or may not succeed in the life sciences space, but being amongst that big herd, they've got the support, they've got, you know, the ability to see who their competitors are and up their game a little bit. They can actually got, you know, some safety in terms of other people around them. So there's all kinds of reasons to get these people together and to get them working as a cluster. Clusters aren't just technical or business, right? I think of anytime you look at something that's starting to be successful, there's all kinds of things that make people successful. So if you're not from Hamilton, hashtag Hamont is kind of the hashtag that gets used for things going on in Hamilton, but there's chambers of commerce. Those are ways to get your businesses together. Here in Hamilton, we have James Street North, which is now sort of an art area. So it's not like an artist sitting in the middle of a neighborhood hoping people come by. It's a whole area that draws the attention of people to come and see lots of arts in one space. And so other artists are discovered, which of course has now turned into Art Crawl on Friday nights. What is it, second Friday of every month? Verify that before you come out. But again, someone created a reason to come out for a group, and the others get carried along. The new people that are part of that sort of cluster get carried along. McMaster and Mohawk work together as MOMAC, and it was one of my daughters was talking about getting accepted into MOMAC. So just all kinds of things. Farmers markets, those are great clusters. These co-working space, which are popping up everywhere, where you don't create an office, you go and get a place at a co-working space where maybe you've got a desk and there's 50 other companies you don't even know that are working. So just every time I look, there's another group that's being formed. In fact, in my role, I try to help those groups actually go off and form. So we let people use our space all the time for meetings or for whatever it is they need. So definitely you don't have to think physical clusters. There's all kinds of ways to have virtual clusters. And obviously Facebook groups is a good way to get people started. And when the internet was really kicking off commercially, we used to talk about the long tail. And the long tail meant that you can find a large group of people around the world. It might not be that you have that group locally, but the long tail says, way, way out there, even though it's a small little slice on a chart, it's still millions of people if you look worldwide. So whatever you're interested in, I guarantee there's someone else in the world that's interested in that too, even if it's so specific that people around you geographically aren't interested in that. People use hashtags now in Twitter just to have these conversations start to cluster, or Google Hangouts or things like that, or even group blogs if you're trying to represent, the knowledge of all that group in terms of the cluster. So, clusters can start small. If you think about what you guys are doing just in the robotics space, obviously you think about all the specialties you may be thinking about in terms of advancing in robotics, from surgery to robotic vision, movement, manufacturing robots. I personally am interested in drones, to the annoyance of my neighbors, but it's my own thing to get around. Just autonomy in general. And then if you took any one of those things, there would be spin-off groups. So I just encourage you to just keep following whatever that is you want and keep building the groups. So, what did I tell you? I said I'm going to tell you that there's power in clusters. Hopefully that made sense. There is tons of proof. So what I want you to do, I want you to go off and form more clusters. You don't have to call them clusters. You can call them special interest groups or associations or clubs or meetups or Facebook groups or whatever you want. But, if you want to be successful and you want to work with like-minded people, then that's really the approach to take. Thank you very much.